Chapter 20 Sight for Sore Eyes. Maybe things will go right this time. Maybe. The gala was a riot of color. Everyone was a little more hyped up than they should be. My eyes excitedly scanned the scene, making sure that everything was going as planned this time. I glanced at my little notebook that had my to-do list as I double-checked everything from the production crew, the props, and design of the function room to the guests that came in through the entrance. I made sure that everyone is seated at their proper place, and that they are satisfied with the demands that they have made prior to the event. With a deep sigh of relief, I sat down on one of the monoblock chairs backstage and let the happiness soak right into my bones. I'm very grateful to see that my hard work these past few weeks was finally paying off. I closed my eyes briefly and savored the moment, but never released my grip on the seemingly insignificant notebook in my hands. For the first time in a while, my body and mind has relaxed. At that moment I felt like there were no expectations upon me. No deadlines and no schedules to meet. I did this. I made this event a success. A small smile crept to my lips as my limbs started to feel supercharged and my head was giddy. I stood up and approached the edge of the stage to take a closer look at the guests that were coming in. I was in awe of their beauty and elegance. Seeing them wear gowns with flowing silks made me want to dance as my feet moved along to the song and my heart was beat with joy. One of the guests caught my attention. Imperial red never looked so beautiful on a woman. With blonde wavy hair and her head held high, she strutted inside with an effortless saunter. The clicking of her heels added rhythm to the soft classical music that was playing without pause. She exuded beauty, confidence, and power that would make anyone look her way. I breathed out a sigh of admiration, secretly wishing that I was just like her. It was then my eyes saw someone that made my heart skip a beat. No, this can't be possible. I mumbled to myself in shock as I stumbled backwards a bit. The thoughts started accelerating inside of my head. I felt the panic begin like a cluster of spark plugs in my abdomen. Tension grew in my face and limbs as my mind replayed our last encounter. I wanted these thoughts inside of my head to slow down so I can breathe, but they wouldn't. My breathing has become more rapid and shallow, almost like gasps that were escaping my mouth. My heart is hammering inside my chest like it was going to explode. The room around me began to spin and I squatted on the floor, trying to make everything slow down to something my brain and body can cope with. I suddenly felt so sick until the point I felt like I was going to black out. In these moments when I experienced my personal hurricane, I understood the drug addict and the alcoholic. I just needed something to stop this primal urge within me to flee. Why? I muttered sadly as I watched him hold the hand of the gorgeous woman that had caught my eye a while ago. I started to feel pity for this girl, wondering if she may be going through the same thing I did before. It was then realization hit me. Wait, Kevin isn't even on the list. Why is he here? Why did he have to come and ruin everything? Sandra. A familiar voice interrupted my thoughts. I quickly stood up and faced the person to see Charlotte. What are you doing? She asked as she arched an eyebrow at me. Oh, nothing. I was just having cold feet. I told her timidly, trying to shake off the effect Kevin had on me. It's okay. It always comes with the job. You'll get used to it. She replied reassuringly, patting my back. I just gave her a small smile. By the way, do you know who that guy is? I asked subtly, pointing to Kevin. Charlotte looked around to see who I'm pointing at. Her eyebrows rose up in realization as she saw who I was asking about. Oh my God. You don't know who Kevin Butler is? He's one of the biggest celebrities today. Charlotte's bewildered expression made me anxious. I looked around to see if we caught others' attention. Thankfully, none of them were paying attention to us. I'm sorry, I just forgot his name. I lied casually, looking up as if trying to recall him. Of course, how could I easily forget him? If I remember correctly, I didn't see his name on our guest list. I added, trying to know the reason why he's here. He's Miss Casey Bishop's date. She explained as it dawned on me that he got invited because of that beautiful woman I was eyeing earlier. Oh, okay. I see. That reminds me I need to check on something. I told her as I walked away. I quickly walked outside the hall. I needed to take a breather. As I was walking outside, I stumbled upon my reflection in the glass window. I looked like a mess. My lips looked pale and my hands were still trembling from seeing Kevin here. I need to calm down. I need to think of a way to continue working without attracting Kevin's attention. I spotted an empty chair nearby and decided to take a seat. I looked down and closed my eyes, trying to think of a solution for this dilemma. Is this seat taken? A woman approached, making me open my eyes to answer her. No, it's not. I answered softly as she pulled the chair close to her. I zoned out as I still thought of a way out of this. In my peripheral vision, I saw the woman use her phone as a mirror to retouch her lipstick. It felt like a light bulb flashed on top of my head. My face lit up as I thought of something. I have a brilliant idea. Chapter 21. Hiding in plain sight. I have decided to become like Cinderella again tonight. However, I do need some help. I did not bring enough makeup products with me, but it was a good thing that the girls in the production team did. I borrowed all the products that I needed, taking a mental note of the people that I originally got this from. I immediately rushed to the nearest restroom while hugging my makeup bag close to my chest. The moment I stepped inside of the restroom, my eyes met my tired reflection. I gazed at my appearance in disappointment. I was disgusted by the power Kevin had over me. My mascara has smudged a little bit, and my foundation has started to cake at the places where I was sweating from nervousness. My eyes continued to roam critically from one feature to another as I planned the makeup look that I should go for. I let out a sigh of exasperation, knowing that I had to take off my makeup and start from scratch. I hurriedly opened my makeup bag and laid out everything that I needed on the counter. I scanned each one and nodded as I placed my hands on my hips. It's going to be a long night. I first started the transformation process by completely removing the makeup that I had on earlier. The splash of cold water from my face instantly made me feel refreshed. It gave a sudden boost of energy. With this newfound spirit, I became determined to transform myself to a more confident woman. I envisioned my look for tonight as I started applying moisturizer on my face. I'm going for a look that says, I'm a strong, independent woman. I applied different makeup products on my face excitedly as I thought about going outside and surprising everyone with my transformation. A smile formed my lips as I examined my reflection. I must admit that I wasn't beautiful in the classical way like Casey Bishop. I had no flowing golden curls or ivory skin, no green piercing eyes and luscious, full lips. I was shorter than the average because of my Asian genes, and I was certainly fuller than a catwalk model, but through my makeup abilities I am able to make my ordinariness into something that is considered to be stunning. Something radiated from within that rendered me irresistible to both genders. This alter ego I have created for myself has made men desire me and women to court my friendship. I breathed out a sigh of relief as I started packing everything back inside. I ran a light hand through my hair, fixing it a little bit so that I'd look more put together. I took a deep breath as I took one last look and stepped out of the washroom. I suddenly felt all eyes on me, making me a little bit uncomfortable. Did I do too much? It was then I spotted Charlotte talking to the other staff. I quickly walked towards her and waved to catch her attention. Charlotte, thank you for your eyeliner, I said gratefully as I pulled it out from the bag and handed it to her. A look of confusion took over my face when I saw the expression on hers. Her eyes were wide with shock and it had a hint of confusion. Her mouth was opened lightly as she tried to process what was in front of her. I arched an eyebrow at her as I waved a hand over her face. Charlotte, you okay? She shook her head, snapping herself out of the trance she was in as she accepted her eyeliner. You look so different, she commented, still in awe. The other staff members that she was talking to turned their attention to me as well, making me flush with embarrassment. Is that a bad thing? I asked sheepishly as I nervously rubbed the back of my neck. Charlotte along with other people shook their heads in response. Charlotte gave me a small smile. You look amazing. Thanks. I grinned at her, feeling satisfied that I got a compliment from her. I gotta return these back. I held up all the other makeup kits I had on my hand. As I walked across the room trying to find where the team members were, I can't help but notice the stares targeted at me. Some people tried to be subtle about it, but there are also others who were openly ogling. The sudden attention people were giving me made me feel shy. I was not used to this kind of recognition from others. I kept my head low as I walked past a bunch of guests. I walked up to one of the production team members. Hey Ariadne, thank you for your eyeshadow and mascara. I flashed a thankful look at her as I handed over her things. Her eyebrows furrowed in confusion. It took a while for her to recognize who I was. Her eyes widened in shock as it dawned on her that I was Sandra. Sandra, wow girl, you look great, she exclaimed happily, making me laugh at her reaction. Thank you, I replied shyly while looking down, making Ariadne purse her lips. Be proud of yourself. Hold your chin up and walk back to the guests with confidence, she uttered as she gripped my shoulders tightly and turned me back towards the guests. Show them your true beauty, she added and slightly pushed me to walk back to the hall. Her pep talk really boosted my morale. It gave me the energy I needed to do my job tonight despite Kevin being here. You're right. Thanks Ariadne. I gave her a small nod and walked back to the gala. This time I held my head high and walked with finesse. I can still feel the gaze people were darting at me, but I just decided to ignore them and focus on my work. I made sure to check everything to make sure the event would run smoothly. While I was standing at the corner eyeing the whole room, I felt someone's eyes on me. From the corner of my eye, I could see a familiar figure approaching me. His eyes were fixated on me as he walked towards me. I turned towards him and held his gaze, trying not to flinch away. I tried to keep my cool as his strides were getting closer to me. "Kevin," I muttered under my breath, leaving a bitter taste in my mouth. Chapter 22. Silence as Evidence. "Hello." He only said 5 letters to me, but it made anger boil deep in my system, as hot as lava. It churned within, hungry for destruction, his destruction. I knew that the pressure of this raging sea of anger would force me to utter things that I did not have the courage to say before, or to express thoughts I've suppressed for years. "You okay there, Buttercup?" he teasingly asked. His tone was playful and flirtatious as he placed a hand on my shoulder. I immediately took a step backward, gently shrugging his hand off my shoulder to not cause a scene. I clenched my teeth as I balled my hands into tight fists. I hated how he did these things just to spite me. Why does he always have to ruin everything? Kevin, it was then it hit me. I only realized it now when I saw that confused look on his stupid face. He doesn't recognize me. I almost forgot that I've transformed myself using the power of makeup. "I'm totally fine, sir. How was your evening?" I forced a close-mouthed smile as I tried to ease my tensed body. Okay, perhaps smile wasn't the right word to describe the look on my face right now. The top row of my teeth was forcibly shown, and there was a faint curve to my lips, but no movement of the cheeks and no crease below my eyes. Anyone would interpret this as a grimace. However, Kevin was always so oblivious to certain social cues, so I'm sure he didn't notice it at all. "I'm loving everything that I've seen so far tonight. Especially this." He eyed me from top to bottom, making me feel uncomfortable. He never really changed. He still continues to be like this to unsuspecting and naive women, who are just happy to be noticed by someone as famous as him in the entertainment industry. "That's nice to know," I responded curtly. I tried to make myself sound as polite as possible, but I just couldn't. I knew that the anger that flared from my eyes somehow showed the scared girl that cowered within. The girl who was taught to fight and starved of the love that I thought I craved. I couldn't help the pain that eventually shone through as my soul drowned in this alter ego I've carved to fit a world of indifference. Just seeing him brought so many unwanted memories, making me feel weak from so much anger and anxiety. I couldn't fight it at all, and I won't, knowing that it takes such a toll on me to do so. "So what's your name?" he asked with a wink as I felt his hand rest on my waist. I quickly glanced at it as I became paralyzed with shock. My eyes and mouth were frozen wide open in an expression of stunned surprise as a wave of memories started to wash over me. "No, not this again. Or should I just call you gorgeous?" He pulled me closer, making me squirm with disgust. I placed my hands on his chest, trying to push him away, but I suddenly didn't have the energy to do so. Another hand that gently grabbed me by the wrist and pulled me away from Kevin cut me short. I turned to look at my savior to see Arthur. My heart leaped with joy as a relieved expression took over my face. "Good evening, Kevin. I need to speak to one of my employees, if that's all right with you." His face was stiff, but his voice was polite so as not to offend a guest. He looked down at me and gave a reassuring smile. "All right, I'll go ahead. See you later, sweetie." I resisted the urge to roll my eyes at his cheeky remark. I breathed out heavily, seeing his back retreating. Thank God Arthur intervened in time, because I don't think I can handle being close to him for a long time. "Are you okay?" His voice was stern but was also filled with worry. "I'm fine. Thank you, Arthur." I gave him a slight hug, to which he was taken aback. His body tensed when we both made contact. He was the first to pull away as he fixed his suit and look around nervously. I got carried away with Kevin that I forgot that we were still working. "Oh, my bad. We're still at work, sorry," I told him sheepishly. "It's okay, Ms." He trailed off. His face had this confused look in it. It was only then that it dawned on me that he doesn't recognize me because of my makeup. "It's me, Sandra." As these words left my lips, his mouth fell open in shock as the realization hit him. I fought the urge to laugh at his expression. "Oh my God. You're Sandra," he exclaimed loudly, drawing other people's attention. I gave them an apologetic nod and lightly dragged him backstage. He had a dazed look on his face, as if he just discovered something as we arrived at a much quieter place. "I'm sorry, it's just that I barely recognized you." He spoke apologetically, but his eyes were still scanning my face. "Yes, I just put on a couple of makeup, that's all." I smiled at him as if to assure him that it's okay. He still seemed amazed at my new look for tonight that he couldn't keep his eyes off of me. "Well, you look gorgeous," he uttered and placed a light kiss on my lips. It made my heart beat crazily. I grinned at him as he pulled away. Well, it's the power of makeup. I smirked at him. His face turned serious all of a sudden, making me furrow my eyebrows in confusion. What's wrong? I asked, hoping to know what's bothering him. No wonder the both of you seem so similar. He tilted his head and put his hand on his chin as if he's thinking carefully, making my face pale and my hands cold. You're Sandy, aren't you? What? I don't know what you're talking about. I looked away, trying to avoid his gaze. By now I can feel the cold sweat trickling down my forehead. Think about it, you both have a friend called Ellie. You even have the same mannerisms as her. You try to cover your face when you're shy. Your face reddens immediately when I do something cheesy, or when you're embarrassed. He told me explicitly, and I snapped my head back to him. I can't believe he remembered all those small details. I thought about how long I can keep this away from him. It's just a coincidence. I don't even know her. I shrugged, trying to act cool. I wanted to add more, but I stopped as he spoke abruptly. Just please tell me honestly, Sandra. He pleaded. He desperately looked at my eyes, searching for the truth. I stayed silent, unable to utter a word. My heart broke at his defeated expression. The answer was already evident in my silence. Chapter 23. Cowardice at its finest. His face fell as realization struck. In that instant his skin grayed. His mouth hung with his lips slightly parted as his eyes were as wide as they could stretch. The moment I saw the look of realization on Arthur's face is when I realized that I have made a grave mistake. Arthur? I trailed off as I felt my anxiety build within me like an unstoppable snowball in the pit of my stomach. I stared at him intently in the grip of silent panic. Everything around me seemed to go in slow motion. I was only focused on him. My heart started to beat harder and faster as I felt my adrenaline levels rise. My brain was immediately filled with negative thoughts as I opened and closed my mouth, desperately thinking of something to say to save this. However, that look on his face was enough for me to confirm that there was no point trying to hide it any longer. I heard my name being called frantically from a distance, making me cut myself short. I snapped my head towards the source of the voice as my eyebrows were furrowed in frustration. The exasperated expression on my face was immediately replaced with a confused and worried one when I saw Joe running towards me. You're needed backstage, he said in between breaths as he rested his hands on his knees to take a break. I turned to look at Arthur first, checking to see that if it's okay that I should go, especially since we were about to talk about something serious. He pursed his lips into a thin line as he breathed out a very heavy sigh. Go where you're needed, he said solemnly as he gave a small nod, gesturing me towards Joe. I stared at him for a while, examining his face to try and understand what he's thinking right now. He looked away as his eyes fell to the floor. A frown formed my lips as I felt my heart sink to the pit of my stomach. He must hate me. I quickly followed Joe soon after to the backstage to assist him with the agenda for today. I brought out my small notebook as I quickly read through my notes, trying to refresh my memory. My encounter with Arthur a while ago suddenly made me absent-minded. Worry started to consume me as I thought about the consequences I have to face, knowing that Arthur has finally realized the truth. My shoulders suddenly started to become tremendously heavy, weighing me down and leaving me paralyzed. Even though I was looking down at my notebook, I couldn't focus on the words that were written on it. Instead, my eyes were locked at this wobbly line on the page due to a printing error as I placed a hand on my chest, trying to calm myself down. I could feel the racing beat of my heart pulsating under my fingertips. Sandra, you need to calm down. Sandra. My thoughts were interrupted when I heard Joe call my name. I snapped my head towards him to see a worried look on his face. Are you all right? He asked. His voice was laced with concern as he approached me. I nodded my head slowly, trying my best to mask the anxious expression on my face as I tried to ease my nerves. I need to focus. I can handle my Arthur problem later. I took a deep, shaky breath as I continued on with my tasks for the next few hours. I tried to distract myself as much as possible with the work at hand, but it was difficult to do so when every once in a while, Arthur and I would make eye contact. Our eyes met once again and I quickly looked away. I focused on untangling the wires of the lapel mic for the next speaker. It was then I noticed from the corner of my eye that he was walking towards me. My heart started to pound inside of my chest as the task in front of me started to become more difficult. My shaky and moist hands couldn't suddenly untangle the small knots, making me frustrated with my incompetence. You can do this, Sandra. Just ignore him. Sandra. Arthur was cut short this time when we heard the host's announcement. The next speaker is a special one indeed. He is one of the most well-known producers in the industry. Can you guys guess who he is? I finished untangling the wires and hurriedly walked towards the next speaker, leaving Arthur behind. Thank you. The next speaker muttered to me as I fixed the microphone on him. As he went up on stage, I checked with the other staff members if there were still anything that needed to be done. I can still sense his eyes on me as I walk around the room. I tried to shake off the uneasy feeling by busying myself in my tasks. Can we now talk? I heard his familiar voice behind me, making my body tense up in agitation. My heart was beating so loudly that I was afraid he might have heard me palpitating. I stood straight to face him, but I felt my chest sink at his expression. His eyes looked dejected as he waited for my answer. I didn't have it in me to turn him down, but I wish I could. I'm very much afraid of what he would say to me when we talk. Pessimistic thoughts rushed through my brain, unable to answer his simple question. Oh, I was cut off by Charlotte's urgent voice. Sandra, we need you here. She gestured to go near her. I saw Arthur's face scrunched up frustratedly as I gave him an apologetic nod and walked towards Charlotte. Arthur's expression kept replaying in my mind as I walked up to Charlotte. It took us a while to fix the wardrobe malfunction of one of the guest speakers. By the time we were done, Arthur was nowhere to be found. I tried looking for him everywhere, unable to see his familiar figure. After the program ended, I spotted Arthur all the way at the back of the hall. My steps grew heavy as I walked towards him. I don't think I can do this. I tried to flee, but his eyes already caught mine. His eyes looked sad as we held each other's gaze. I felt my stomach churn. I don't think I can handle this. As he tried to make his way to me, I quickly bolted to the nearest exit. I looked back to see if he followed me out. I sighed in relief for not seeing him. I hailed a cab and decided to go home. I'm such a coward. Way to go, Sandra. Maybe I should just be named Sandra the cowardly girl for ruining my chance at fixing this thing. How can I face him tomorrow? Chapter 24. The Painful Truth. Arthur knows the truth. And like a coward, I just ran away. I'm definitely facing the consequences of it all now. I can feel the impact of my actions weighing down on me as I stared at my phone screen in shock. The panic that welled up inside of me started out as thin tissue, something that my fingers can manage to pierce breathing holes in. However, as time progressed, the panic had transformed into a flood of ice water surrounding every limb, creeping higher until it passed my nose and mouth. I grasped my chest, trying to calm down my fast-paced heartbeat as I took deep, shaky breaths. What am I going to do now? From Arthur. I'm coming to your apartment now. We need to talk. Despite my attempts to calm myself down, my breathing continued to become rapid and shallow. I held my head as I felt my pulse pounding in my temples. With a deep sigh, I sat on the edge of my bed. My legs felt like it was going to give out from so much nervousness. Thoughts filled with regret took over my mind as I lay down on my bed. Even though I don't want to, I have to face him. I have to do what is right. I hugged one of my pillows close to my chest as I shut my eyes tightly, wishing that all of this was just a dream. I hated how I kept on blaming Kevin a while ago for ruining everything when in reality, I'm the one who has done this to myself and the people around me. I chose to go to that party that night. I chose to not tell Arthur the truth after. I chose to transform myself with makeup because of the coward in me again. My thoughts were interrupted when I heard a knock on the door. My heart skipped a beat as I shot up from my bed. He's here. I swung my feet out of my bed and into my slippers and hurriedly walked towards the door. I reached out to open the door, but the coward in me stopped my hand from moving any further. It shakily hovered over the doorknob as I could hear him pacing back and forth outside. It hurts me knowing that I did this to him. He has been nothing but kind to me during our relationship, and yet I repay him with this. Sandra. His low, husky voice sent shivers down my spine. I took a deep breath as I finally held the doorknob. The cold surface managed to wake me up and bring me back to reality. Coming. I stuttered as I hesitantly unlocked the door. A wave of emotions immediately washed over me when I saw the look on his face. His eyes were narrowed, rigid, cold, and hard. At that moment I knew he was already far away. The anger that flared from his eyes showed a look of betrayal and disgust. How could you? He said those 3 words through clenched teeth. His voice was cold and harsh. I opened and closed my mouth to speak, but no words came out. It felt like my heart was breaking apart. I never got the chance to say anything as he stormed inside the apartment and slammed the door shut. So all this time you have been deceiving me then? Unbelievable. He threw his hands up in exasperation. I was just staring at him the whole time, scared that I might say something wrong. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. My words were cut short as he laughed sarcastically at my lame excuse. You didn't mean what? You didn't mean lying to my face every time you see me? He said incredulously as his face turned red in anger. We've been in a relationship for a couple of months now, Sandra. You had lots of chances to come up to me and say, "Hi, Arthur. I'm also Sandy. It isn't that hard," he added, making me look down. I know he's right. I really didn't mean to keep it to him, but being the sissy that I am, I just didn't have the heart to break it to him. It may sound like an excuse, but I thought that keeping it from you would be much better. I already like our current situation. I didn't want to ruin that. I mustered all the courage I had to make him understand my sentiments. He just looked at me like I had grown another head. Are you kidding me? It's already ruined and you still had the audacity to give me that lame excuse. He closed his eyes and turned his back on me, trying to hold his anger, but it felt like he was failing miserably. His heavy breathing was the only sound in the room at the moment. By now it felt like I had dug my own grave and I couldn't get out without having to tell him the whole thing. I just stared at his back for a long time, contemplating where to start explaining to him. Where should I begin? How will I tell him? All these worries flooded endlessly in my mind. My thoughts drifted away as to how I would answer all these things. His voice immediately cut off my internal monologue. Did you even love me? He asked softly. His voice was filled with hurt. I didn't realize he was already facing me. His eyes were longing for the right answers. I felt my chest pang with guilt. I feel like crying at his statement. I do love you, Arthur. I tried to reach out my hand to him, but he just swatted it away as if he was disgusted at me. Because if you did, you would have told me earlier, he said furiously, making me flinch at his harsh tone. This wasn't like the Arthur I loved, but then again this was all my fault. I made him turn this way. If only I hadn't run away at the gala that night, maybe things wouldn't be as worse as now. Please believe me when I say that I love you, I pleaded, making him stare at me indifferently. I didn't dare get close to him, afraid that he would just push me away. At this point I felt like I'm on the brink of crying. I can feel my throat tighten and my eyes welling up. I can't take any more of these lies, Sandra. When will you start telling me the truth? He shouted, making me wince at him. I took a step back at him. By now I felt hot tears rolling down my cheeks. I couldn't contain the overwhelming emotions anymore as I broke down in front of him. He tried to come close to comfort me, but I just kept on crying non-stop. He pulled me near his chest and engulfed me in a warm embrace. If this were any other day, I would have been flustered by this, but today is a different day. I continued to bawl my eyes out on his chest as he rubbed his hand on my back, trying to soothe me. I'm sorry, I heard him saying in between my sobs. The tears just kept flowing down continuously and he constantly patted my back. After pouring out all the tears I had, I felt the fatigue wash over me. I pulled back and saw my tears stained his suit. I'm sorry about that. I looked up to him apologetically. His eyes softened and he gently cupped my face and wiped my tears away using his thumbs. I closed my eyes to savor his touch. I shouldn't have shouted like that. I'm sorry, he mumbled as he removed his hands from my face. I suddenly missed their warmth. My anger got the best of me today. I was just frustrated about the fact that you kept this hidden from me, he added, making me open my eyes to gaze at him. He clearly regretted what he did earlier, as it was evident in his eyes. It was my turn to cup his face this time. I'll tell you everything you want to know, I told him, and he nodded in response. This is now the moment of truth. Chapter 25. How and why we hurt. Does the truth imprison us, or does it set us free? One thing I know for sure, the truth can hurt. I can kind of compare my situation to a drug addict or an alcoholic who has faced an intervention from friends and professionals. Through this, the addict will have a head-on collision with the truth. The addict is now faced with a mirror of herself, and of the love and concern of people who she cares about. The addict hopefully sees the truth in their eyes and words and eventually does turn their lives around. Facing the truth about our negative sides is a difficult thing to do. However, none of us can improve without knowing the truth, even when it hurts. If we learn the truth really does set us free. It's time for me to face the negative side of me, and to talk about the trauma that I have developed because of Kevin. I've hid all of this from him and kept all of my emotions and past trauma to myself. It is time for me to have a taste of freedom. With a sigh, I leaned my back against the wall and slowly fell to the floor. I patted the space beside me and he reluctantly followed. He furrowed his eyebrows as he stared at me expectantly. I took a deep breath and flashed him a sad smile. Ever since I was younger, I've always wanted to be a celebrity makeup and hair stylist. I began as I tilted my head back and leaned it against the wall. There was something about the act of transforming yourself with different looks and styles that really amazed me. A small grin formed my lips once I remembered the night Arthur and I first met. Like Cinderella, she transformed for just a moment to escape reality, and to dance with the prince. Was I your prince? He asked curiously as he followed my gaze and looked up as well. I let out a soft chuckle. Yes and no, I retorted as I glanced at him. He turned to look at me and our eyes met. There was a glint in his eyes that I couldn't decipher as he tilted his head to the side in confusion. What do you mean? As this is not some fairy tale book, I've eventually come to realize that there are good and bad princes. I trailed off as a wave of painful memories washed over me. I inhaled sharply as I ran a shaky hand through my hair. Before I met you, a good prince, I had to meet a bad prince too. He moved his body towards my direction and leaned in anticipation. I looked away, afraid that he might see me tear up. When I worked at KB Studios as a makeup and hairstylist, I was very happy and excited to go to work because I really loved my job. I beamed as I recalled all the makeup looks I've done for the models and actresses. My dreams came true, and at the time this guy was flirting with me as well. I felt Arthur's body tense beside me as he started to look deep in thought. Wait, he trailed off, sounding confused. This was the same story you told me that night, right? I nodded sadly. I couldn't believe that this was happening to me at first. I felt flattered that a guy like him, a prominent name in the entertainment industry, is interested in someone like me. I said wistfully as I shook my head, disappointed at my stupidity. I was truly naive before. I saw him as my prince back then until I cut myself short as I bit my lower lip, trying to stop the tears that were welling up in my eyes from spilling. He took advantage of me. My voice cracked at the last few words as I felt a tear roll down my cheek. I quickly wiped it with the back of my hand as I looked away. I desperately wanted to be strong, even if it's just in front of Arthur. I've got to tell him the truth. Sandra, if you're not comfortable, I cut him short. It's okay, I uttered softly. I can feel his intense gaze at me while I just stared in front, remembering the memories that happened. Back then he treated me well, as if he really liked me. He usually sent my flowers while at work. He seemed sweet as he gave me compliments, and the thing that really made me believe his intentions were when he said that he couldn't live without me. Being the naive girl I was back then made me fall for his acts. I continued as if it only happened yesterday. A wave of emotions rushed in me as I recall everything. I felt angry, frustrated, and sad. I clenched my fists to stop myself from crying. Arthur saw my tightly closed fists and put his hand over it as if to comfort me. I didn't dare to look at him as I'm afraid that I would burst into tears. I cleared my throat to continue my story. Then one time he asked me to sleep with him. I remember him coming from a party as he smelled like liquor when he went to my previous apartment. From there he barged his way in and asked me in verbatim to have sex with him. When I refused, he threw a fit and tried to trash my apartment. I can feel my whole body shaking. Is it because of fear? Or it could be anger. Maybe I am just angry that I felt weak during that time, knowing that I should have fought back. It's okay, you don't have to continue. Arthur pulled me in for a warm embrace. His hand moved in circles at my back as if to stop me from shaking. It worked as I relaxed to his touch. I breathed heavily to his chest, enjoying his body heat. I eventually pulled away to look at him. No, I want to continue, I said sternly, making his eyebrows furrow as he stared deeply into my eyes. He had this questioning look that asks if I'm sure that I still want to carry on. He sighed defeatedly as he already knew the answer. Okay. Then what happened next? He asked, urging me to resume the story. It was then that he revealed his intentions. He said that he only wanted to get close to me because I was an easy target, and that I was just some ignorant girl that he can easily manipulate and dispose of after he's finished with me. I can feel Arthur's rage beside me. I turned to him only to be met with his fuming expression. His face turned red with anger as he huffed loudly. That bastard! I heard him mutter under his breath. It was now my turn to console him. I reached my hand to touch his face to calm him down. He closed his eyes and leaned onto my hand as he tried to steady his breathing. You okay? I asked as I continued caressing his cheeks. He slowly opened his eyes to look at me. His eyes softened as he held my hand. He slightly turned to my hand as he placed a gentle kiss on my palm. I'm sorry, I really got carried away, he mumbled faintly. Go on. He gestured to me to keep going. After throwing a couple of things in my apartment, I eventually kicked him out. But before he left, he told me something I couldn't forget. He said, to make it big in this industry you have to listen and do as I say. If you can't do that, might as well kiss your dreams goodbye. At that time I didn't even care, I just wanted him out. But I didn't know that was the start of something bigger. I felt my heart constrict as I remember what happened after. Why? What happened? Arthur was visibly curious. His eyes widened as he waited for the continuation. I didn't know that he spread fake rumors about me the following day. As I walked to work, my coworkers kept whispering behind my back. It was Ellie who told me all the circulating rumors about me. I couldn't hold it back anymore. I felt the hot, wet tears running down my face as I looked back on those days. You know, I heard very ridiculous stories about me at that time. I tried to laugh to mask my crying, but the sadness was overpowering that I just sobbed uncontrollably. Arthur pulled me back to his chest and patted my back, but that gesture made me weep even more. There, it's okay. He mumbled into my head as he placed a light kiss on it while trying to console me. I cried for what felt like an hour until I felt that I had no more tears left to cry. I moved away from him and saw his shirt stained with tears. You don't have to continue anymore, that's enough, he said sternly as he tried to brush aside a hair on my face. Okay, I croaked out, feeling tired. Arthur got up from his seat and I looked up to him. Where are you going? I asked, missing his warmth beside me. I'll just get you some water and a tissue, he replied as he walked away to fetch me water and tissue. As he returned, I gave him a grateful look as he handed over the things he brought. I finished the whole glass and wiped myself thoroughly. Thank you. I gave him a faint smile as I tried to stand up from my seat. We both moved to the couch to be seated comfortably. Now that I heard everything, I want to know who this bastard is. His voice was laced with venom as he spoke. I don't think he'll see it coming once I tell him. I took a deep breath. It's Kevin Butler. Chapter 26, Sabotage. I hated the way that he looked at me now. It's been a week since my talk with Arthur, and things have never been the same between us. Every time we passed by each other in the hallways, his eyes always held a glint of sadness and betrayal. Meanwhile, mine had guilt and regret, knowing that all of this could have been prevented if I just told him the truth sooner. I suddenly missed the awkward encounters that we had before. I missed the courteous nods and shy waves. I missed being able to see him up close and admire his flawless skin and beautiful features. I just miss him. Lately, it seemed like he was trying to avoid interaction with me altogether. He would pretend to be busy on his phone or he would look the other way. Even though it hurt seeing him being so distant from me, I knew that I did the right thing. I scowled, recalling the talk that we had a week ago as I shook my head wistfully, trying to push it to the back of my mind. I let out a long sigh as I rested my chin on the back of my hand. I'm sure he's still in shock about everything I've told him, and I knew that it was best to just give him space. Meanwhile, I have to face the consequences of my actions. After all, this is all my fault. Miss Bailey. An unfamiliar voice snapped me out of the trance that I was in. I snapped my head towards the source of the voice to see a woman stand awkwardly next to my desk. I'm Sophia, the new intern, she explained, noticing the confused expression on my face. My eyes widened in surprise as I fixed my posture and turned to face her fully. HR has hired an intern for me due to the sudden increase of events this year, knowing that it would be too difficult for me to manage everything perfectly on my own. Welcome to Williams Incorporated, I said with a smile as I eyed her from top to bottom. She had a kind of understated beauty, perhaps it was because she was so disarmingly unaware of her prettiness. Her black skin was completely flawless and it contrasted beautifully with her white pantsuit. Here are the files I've prepared for you. I gestured towards the stack of papers that were under the turtle paperweight. Her jaw dropped as a look of regret took over her face. I chuckled lightly at her reaction. Don't worry, you'll get used to it soon. I then proceeded to explain all the files that I have prepared for her, along with her responsibilities and the workload that she would have on a daily basis. I also showed her where I left off in preparation for the next event, which is in a couple of weeks. She seemed very enthusiastic to start working because she even took notes and pictures so that she wouldn't forget anything. I couldn't help but smile at her determination because I somehow saw myself in her. I stood behind Sophia as she started navigating the computer. I sneakily glanced at Arthur, seeing him focused on his work. His eyes were locked on the screen and his eyebrows were furrowed in concentration as he busily typed on his laptop. It was then he suddenly stopped to get his notepad at the edge of the table. As he stretched his arm to reach it, he glanced at my direction. This was the first time that we held each other's gaze after our talk. There was a sad look in his eyes as he stared at me intently. Like the coward I am, I was the first to break away as I turned back to Sophia. I let out a soft sigh. That's Mr. Williams' room, right? Sophia whispered gently as if it's forbidden to talk about him. I felt a blush creep to my cheeks in embarrassment, knowing that I got caught staring at him. I nodded in response as her eyes suddenly sparkled with curiosity and excitement. Mr. Williams is cute, isn't he? She sighed dreamily. Yeah. I muttered quietly in response as I felt annoyed with what she said. I tried my best to contain the jealousy that was seeping through me by balling my hands into fists. I gritted my teeth as I narrowed my eyes at her while she was gawking at Arthur from her seat. I know it's not her fault for thinking that way. Arthur is so handsome, caring, and attentive. When I think about it, I'm just so lucky to have him. I opened my mouth to speak, but I cut myself short when I felt my phone vibrate in my pocket. I quickly pulled it out to see that I got a text from LLL Corp. From LLL Corp. Greetings, Ms. Bailey. We'd first like to thank you for your interest in applying for the makeup and hairstylist position in our prestigious company, and like we said before, we love the makeup look that you did on one of our models. We are aware that you are supposed to start in a week or so, however. We regret to inform you that we have recently collaborated with another company for an event, and they said that they preferred that we would use their current makeup and hairstylist instead. We are deeply sorry for the inconvenience, and we wish you luck in all of your future endeavors. We will message you immediately if we have any open positions soon. Thank you and have a good day. I felt like all the blood from my face disappeared as I finished the last sentence. I closed my phone, still stunned from what I read. I stood there still trying to register what just happened. I thought everything was already in place. Is this for real? What do they mean? Sandra. Sophia trailed off as she tried to get my attention. I snapped back to reality as I heard Sophia's voice. I didn't realize that I was so absorbed in my thoughts. Ah, yes, I replied, looking down at her. She turned to me to ask about one of the files on the computer. I gave her a close-lipped smile as I leaned and looked at what she was gesturing at. I breathed out deeply. I have to keep it together until I finish this task. As soon as I helped her transfer some paperwork to her desk, which was not so far from mine, I let her manage the rest on her own. If you have questions, I'll just be on the other desk. Good luck. I bid her goodbye and she smiled in return. I went back to my table to organize my things. My mind drifted back to the text message. I opened my phone to reread the message again. I still couldn't believe what I was seeing. I slumped down on my chair as I ran a hand through my hair in frustration. Out of all of the things I could have received today, it had to be this. I sighed heavily as I stared into space. A thought suddenly popped into my head, making me sit upright. Oh my God, I'm going to be unemployed. I flushed in embarrassment, remembering that I told Arthur a few months ago about my plan to resign. How will I be able to pay my bills? Does this mean I'll be going back to my previous job? I wanted to curse so badly. Anger started to boil inside me as I slammed the table, making other people glance at me. For once I didn't mind. I was livid. I huffed loudly, trying to hold back the resentment I felt for LLL Corp. How could they abruptly turn me down like that? What the hell am I gonna do now? Wait a minute. I faintly remember that there is another company involved. I checked my phone to make sure that I was right. Who could this be? Maybe Kevin is behind this. He must have known that I applied at LLL Corp. Is this his way of destroying my chance at pursuing my dreams? It's possible. He's the only one who would do this to me. I opened my computer to search for new articles regarding LLL Corp. After browsing the internet for a couple of minutes, I found an article that states their new collaboration with KB Studios. I felt my heart drop to the pit of my stomach after I confirmed that my hunch was right. I scrolled through the article to see Ms. Labine shaking hands with Kevin. I glared at the screen. He must have something to do with the rejection of my application. I furrowed my eyebrows as I kept throwing daggers with my eyes at his picture on the website. If looks could kill, he'd be 6 feet buried on the ground now. My seething anger has now reached a boiling point. I clenched my fist tightly as I bit my lower lip, trying to suppress the scream that wanted to escape. He has done nothing but bring bad things into my life. I felt a surge of energy run through my veins as I was suddenly determined to make him pay. It was like I was possessed. There was this newfound courage and strength that took over me. I've had enough. It's my turn to make sure he regrets everything he did. I'm going to confront him about his deliberate sabotage plan, as I am now fueled with my desire to bring him down. I'm not going to sit back and let him continue to ruin my life anymore. He shouldn't have messed with me in the first. Chapter 27. Confronting the Saboteur. I can't believe I'm back at KB Studios. All of the unwanted memories that I had of him and of this company started flooding in, taking over my thoughts. My knuckles have turned white from clenching my fists tightly as I gritted my teeth in an attempt to restrain myself from losing control. My hunched form exuded an animosity that was like acid burning, destructive and potent. As I walked inside and towards the elevator with confidence, my face was red with suppressed rage, ready to explode. And so when someone I didn't know set a finger on my shoulder, I immediately swung around and mentally snapped. I narrowed my eyes and glared at the person, letting out a groan of annoyance. My eyes widened in surprise when I saw that it was one of the employees. I furrowed my eyebrows at her in confusion. I have never seen her before. She must be new. Excuse me, Ms. Is there someone you're looking for? She stuttered nervously as she struggled to meet my intimidating gaze. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself down as I forced a smile. I just need to speak with Kevin. I responded curtly as I proceeded to walk towards the elevator. I stopped mid-step when I heard her following behind me. I snapped my head towards her, scowling at her persistence. I don't have time for this. Don't worry, I know the way. I've worked here before. I stated matter-of-factly as I quickly entered the first elevator that opened. But she was cut short by the elevator suddenly closing in on her face. I let out a sigh of relief as I leaned against the elevator walls. I was determined to confront him. I didn't want to hide behind layers of makeup and hairspray any longer. I don't want to be a coward anymore. A surge of adrenaline ran through my veins as the elevator opened to his floor. With every step, I got angrier and more determined to face him. The thought of being able to see him again drove me insane. When I still worked in this company, he felt empowered to micromanage every little aspect of my life, every damn thing done his damn way. I would often swallow my pride and just do whatever he wanted, smile and move on. But now I know that it only made it worse, and even after I left the company, he has continued to harass me and ruin my life. I can no longer tolerate this abuse anymore. I just finally snapped. All that rage came out faster than magma, and it's just as destructive. It consumed all that I was, so delicate under that carefully ordered world I've created for myself. I wanted him to shrivel before me and do damage with my words. I have become vengeful and mean. I am now a person he didn't want to know anymore. As I approached his office, I saw his assistant look at me as if she had seen a ghost. Her eyes were wide as she stood up to try and stop me from entering. "Excuse me, Miss Bailey, Mr. Butler is busy right in." "Kevin," I yelled, pushing the door of his office wide open and completely ignoring his assistant. Kevin's eyes widened as his jaw dropped in surprise. He was on the phone with someone right now, and it seemed important because he was actually taking notes. I rolled my eyes. When I used to work for him, he claimed that he had a fantastic memory, and that he only needed to take notes when it's necessary. I placed one hand on my hip and closed the door behind me with the other, locking it so that his assistant could no longer intervene. He let out a long, exasperated sigh. "I'm sorry, sir. Can I please call you back? I suddenly have an urgent matter to attend to." His voice sounded very polite, that you would actually mistake it as his true personality. Underneath all of his kind acts, there's a monster that's ready to devour and take advantage of innocent women. I held back the urge to gag as he ended the call. His whole being made me sick. "Are you done?" I spat impatiently as he placed down his phone. He cleared his throat and loosened the collar of his shirt. He seemed to be taken aback by my harsh tone. His surprised expression was soon replaced with arrogance, an expression I knew too well. "Look who's here, if it isn't Sandra Bailey." He let out a dry and sarcastic laugh. "Please have a seat." He gestured to me to sit on one of the metal chairs in his office. He had on his signature smirk that I desperately wanted to wipe off his stupid face. "Enough with the pleasantries, Kevin. Let's cut to the chase," I retorted in annoyance. He still had this smug look on his face, thinking that he had the upper hand. "Why the hell did you step in to ruin my chance at LLL Corp?" I said through gritted teeth. Kevin, being the douchebag that he is, feigned a shocked expression as he registered my question. "What are you talking about, sweetheart? I don't know anything about that." He stood up and walked around the table to stand closer to me. "You don't have any proof now, do you?" he whispered viciously as he leaned in closer. Pathetic. By this time my face was now red with rage. My hands were now itching to smack his face, but I had to fight the urge not to. I leaned back as I grimaced in disgust. I felt uncomfortable being too close to him. Even though I was no longer terrified to face him, I still knew deep down that he's capable of other terrible things, and I definitely do not want to find out what those are anytime soon. "What makes you think I'd barge in here without any proof?" I spat, trying to stand my ground. The cocky expression on his face quickly faded and was replaced with a frown. A smirk formed my lips, knowing that I finally had the upper hand. Lying had become a thing I got accustomed to lately, so why not use this newfound skill to have leverage over him? After all, he doesn't need to know about this. He let out a sigh of defeat as he folded his arms over his chest. "All right, fine. What do you want?" he said hesitantly as he stormed back to the other side of his desk. "You want money? How much do you want?" he added angrily as he pulled out a check from his drawer. I just stared at him in disbelief. What does he take me for? Do I have to spell it out to him? Before he could write anything on the check, I made sure to cut him off. No, I don't want your money. I just want you to stay the hell away from me and my career. Leave me alone. I responded sharply. He stared at me in disbelief, checking to see if I was joking or not. I held his gaze with the same intensity. He was the first to break away from our fierce staring contest, and he started laughing hysterically. I raised an eyebrow at him, unamused at his reaction. Why is this bastard suddenly laughing? I just gaped at him the whole time, waiting for him to finish. He gasped for air as he fell down to his chair with a soft thud. Wow, you've changed, Sandra. He eyed me top to bottom. I tried to look unfazed by his stare. Of course I did. I'm not the same naive girl that you once thought I was. I replied confidently, to which he just shook his head and looked down. It took him a while to look back up to me. I scowled in confusion. What is he doing? Maybe he's in deep thought, or maybe he just reminisced on the days he abused me. Whatever it is, it sure changed his aura. As he glanced back up to me, his eyes looked cold. The look that he gave me made a shiver run down my spine, but I still held my ground. Yes, I did underestimate you. So now he only acknowledges me when I try to threaten him. Great. Looks like this is the only good thing that my lies had brought me. He then started to glare at me. His eyes held a glint that I couldn't decipher. I arched an eyebrow at him, trying to mask the fact that he started to intimidate me at this point. Why are you looking at me like that? It got me thinking. He trailed off as he rubbed his chin while he was deep in thought. Maybe you're the one that's behind the cancellation of one of my deals with LKG Pictures. He said suspiciously as his eyes darted daggers accusingly. I tilted my head and raised my eyebrows at him. Confusion is an understatement to what I'm feeling right now. What is he talking about? Does he think that by accusing me I'll back down? Well, prepare to be disappointed, Kevin. Stop spouting nonsense. I don't know what you're talking about. My voice went a bit higher than usual. I slapped myself internally. Sandra, don't falter. He didn't look convinced with my statement. Just admit it. You had done something to rescind my newest collaboration with LKG Pictures. He shouted at me, making me feel a bit scared because of his loud voice, but I tried my best not to flinch. You have to stay strong, Sandra. First of all, I am just an events coordinator at Williams Incorporated. Secondly, I'm not some powerful person who can just magically revoke your agreement with this company. I yelled back at him. He can't just scream at me and expect me to stand still. I'm not the defenseless girl I was back then. How would you not know? He looked at me as if I was stupid. I saw you one time with Arthur Williams in a coffee shop once. His company is closely tied with LKG Pictures. He explained as he narrowed his eyes at me. You must have told him something. He stated matter-of-factly as he pointed at me accusingly. I scowled at him in confusion. I really didn't know what he was talking about. I would never ask Arthur to do something like this. And here I thought you changed. Still hiding behind some rich guy to help you slither your way back to the industry. He spat back, making me laugh at his lame attempt of blaming me. It was then it hit me. What if he's right? Was Arthur really behind it all? Even though it made me think about what he said, I'll just save that for later after our conversation. I can't be distracted or else I'll lose this. You're really blaming me for something I didn't do. That's rich of you to do. I sneered at him as I desperately tried to mask the confused expression that I had on my face. If I told him something, that's not the only thing that I'll ask him to do to you. I added just to scare him a bit. So you do admit you were behind it? He retorted arrogantly, acting as if he caught me red-handed. I just gave him a dry smile. He really does seem pathetic. I can't believe that I used to be so terrified of this man. I said if. That doesn't mean anything. I shrugged nonchalantly as I turned my back at him. I guess our conversation here is done. I made my way to the door. I've had enough of our conversation. It was starting to become pointless. As I reached for the door handle, his words made me suddenly stop. This isn't over, Sandra. His tone was low and serious. I couldn't care less as to what he had to say. I already said everything that I had to say. I didn't turn around and acknowledged him. Instead, I just pushed the door open and proceeded to show myself out, slamming the door shut in the process. I walked out of the building with a heavy heart. I can feel the fatigue that I got from meeting Kevin. Each step to the bus station grew heavier. As I sat down at the waiting area, my mind drifted back to what he said earlier. Maybe Arthur had something to do with it. Why did he do that? Was it because of me? Or was it just purely business? Lots of unanswered questions popped inside my head. I must confirm it with him. I held my face with both of my hands in exasperation. When will all of this? Chapter 28 Beautiful Goodbye. I've had enough of all of this. With a sigh, I slumped in one of the seats in the cafe near Williams Incorporated. I bit my lower lip, trying my best to stop the tears that were welling up in my eyes. Even though I was furious at Kevin, it was still hard for me deep down to see him. I feel tired and defeated from all of these problems that were suddenly thrown my way. I grabbed my phone as I stared at the conversations I had with Arthur. I need to ask him about what Kevin said a while ago. It's now or never. I started typing my message because I was too tired to call him. I was not in the mood to talk yet. I was just too tired of everything. There's a certain level of tiredness that equates to insanity. For me, it's when I'd like to temporarily dislocate my spirit from my body, as if I could ask whatever got out there to take me out for just a short while, let my soul go wherever souls go to be zen. I'm a fairly brave person. I think I am. Well, I try to be, but sometimes I just don't want to feel the process of recovery all over again. I know I'll wake up feeling okay in the morning. It's simply a level of wornoutness that hurts. To Arthur. We need to talk. Let's meet at our usual place. I sent it as I tried to push my thoughts about a while ago to the back of my mind, but it kept on resurfacing. I decided to order food even though I didn't feel hungry at all. I just needed something to distract myself. I saw you one time with Arthur Williams in a coffee shop once. His company is closely tied with LKG Pictures. His words echoed inside my head as I closed my eyes, struggling to block everything out. I really can't do this anymore. Hello, Mom. Here's your order. The waiter's voice snapped me out of the trance I was in as he placed my order in front of me. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding as I tried to take a bite. Swallowing seemed difficult for me all of a sudden, and eating didn't seem to make things better. I pushed the food away. With butterflies in my stomach and my head buzzing with possibilities, there was no way on earth that I'd be able to swallow a bite, let alone a whole plateful. I shouldn't have bought that. Just like I shouldn't have gone to the party that night. I muttered to myself bitterly, shaking my head in disappointment. It was then a familiar figure caught my eye, making my stomach more knotted up. The world around me suddenly went silent as I watched him approach me. The only thing I could hear now is the sound of my heart throbbing against the cage of her chest. I swallowed the lump of my throat. This is it. I'll go straight to the point, I said bluntly as he sat down on the chair in front of me. I forced myself to make eye contact with him as I leaned against the chair and crossed my legs. Did you do it? Did what? His eyebrows raised in confusion. I struggled to not roll my eyes at him. You know what I'm talking about. I deadpan. Kevin and LKG Pictures. Does that ring a bell? I added. His jaw dropped in surprise and he eventually nodded his head hesitantly as he registered what I said. Oh, him, what about it? He feigned ignorance. Why is he making this difficult? This is making me even more tired. I let out a long sigh as frustration started building up inside me. Well, I heard from him that his contract with LKG got cancelled, and I was wondering if you had something to do with what? I uttered, trying to keep my cool. Yes, I told them to cut him off from the production. He explained nonchalantly with a shrug as if it's not a big deal. Why did you do that? I asked angrily. He seemed taken aback by the tone of my voice as his eyes widened. He deserved it. He's horrible and I just wanted to get back at him for what he's done to you. His tone was defensive. He really didn't think about the possible consequences of his actions, did he? Do you even know what he's done to me? He interfered with my application at LLL Corp. I snapped at him. By now, our discussions were getting louder as the tension between us grew higher. I had to take a deep breath to calm myself down. I'll talk to LLL Corp. He uttered as he tried to pull out his phone. I held onto his arm to stop him. No, don't do that. I glared at him, to which he put his phone back in his pocket. Why not? I can help yo, he tried to reason out, but I cut him short before he could even finish. Like I told you before, I don't want to get in because of connections. I want to be recognized by my talent and hard work, I said sternly. He stared at me intently, trying to see if he could still change my mind. Also, if I were to get in because of you, he will just spread nasty rumors about us. He said he already saw us at the cafe together. This might ruin your image to the public, I added, to which his eyes softened. He sighed in defeat. I'm sorry. Everything's my fault. I shouldn't have done anything without your permission, he said apologetically as his eyes fell to the table. I just thought that I was helping you, but it turns out I only ruined it for you, he muttered sheepishly. He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. It's fine, what's done is done. We can only move forward from now on. I gave him a tight-lipped smile to comfort him. It's true we can't undo what's already done. We should just focus on the future. Maybe this is my karma for lying to Arthur. Maybe this is me paying back my bad deeds. My thoughts were suddenly cut off by Arthur's voice. So what's your plan now? He asked, making me tilt my head to the side. A plan? Do I even have one? Everything went by in a blur, that I didn't even have time to properly register what's happening. One moment I was still enjoying my job and my relationship with Arthur. The next thing I knew, everything was just falling apart. Sandra. He trailed off, waiting for my response. I'll be resigning from Williams Incorporated. As soon as these words left my lips, his eyes widened in surprise. What? Just because of some stupid guy you'll throw away your job? I won't let you do that. He said angrily, making me wince at the tone of his voice. I'll deal with him, don't worry. He added as he huffed loudly. I tried to calm him down by holding both of his hands. I tried to rub small circles on them using my thumb. It seemed to be working as his breathing went back to normal. Please don't do anything for me, I said genuinely as we locked gazes. His eyes had a hint of sadness and defeat. I know you're only looking out for me, but I don't want you to be involved in matters concerning Kevin and I. You already have so much to think about, I don't want to be a burden. I voiced out as soon as he calmed down. But, he retorted, but I immediately cut him off. Besides, I don't want you to think that I'm only using you for your money and status. I added, recalling what he said to me a while ago. Even though it wasn't true, those words really stung. The last thing I'd want to do is to prove him right. I appreciate everything you have done for me, but this is the only way in order for you not to get caught up with my feud with him. I uttered sincerely as I flashed him a small smile. Not once have I thought about that way. He muttered softly as he gripped my hand tightly. I'm sorry that it has to be this way, Arthur. I murmured as I brought his hand close to my lips and planted a soft kiss on it. I'll just send you my resignation letter as soon as I get home. I need to go home now, I told him as I stood up and grabbed my bag. Arthur followed closely behind me. As we reached the door, I turned to him to bid him goodbye. Let me take you home, he offered before I could even say my goodbye to him. It's fine, I can manage. As I walked to the bus stop, I felt him grip my hand, which made me stop and turn to look at him. Please, I insist. You look so tired. Let me just drop you home. His voice was laced with desperation as he looked at me with pleading his eyes. The look on his voice and the tone of his voice made my heart sink to the pit of my stomach, but I tried my best to stand my ground. I gently pulled his hand away from me. I caressed his cheek to assure him that I'll be fine. No, really. I'm fine and I want to be alone. I gave him a small smile to assure him. He tried to reciprocate the gesture, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. All right. He sighed in defeat and I dropped my hand to my side. I gave him a small and courteous nod before I began to walk away from him. I turned around after a couple of steps to see if he's still there. Seeing his back slowly retreating to the other side made my heart ache. I guess this will be the last I'll be seeing him. The ride home has never felt so tiring. Images of what transpired today kept replaying inside my mind. The past couple of days had been such a whirl. I knew that confessing the truth to Arthur would make things worse, but I wasn't expecting Kevin to sabotage my career. It must have been so hard on Arthur to know about the truth and to be caught up with my feud with Kevin. I let out a tired sigh as I leaned my head against the bus window. I guess in order for everything to return back to normal, I knew that I should just stay away from Arthur. I guess this is goodbye. Chapter 29, Rising Phoenix. I'm an idiot. After my confrontation with Kevin and Arthur, I spent my time drowning myself in self-pity as I curled up in my bed. My thick and warm blankets were covering my whole body as I hugged my pillow close to my body for comfort. I spent the night crying over everything that has happened recently, from my past in KB Studios, and my recent encounters with Kevin to the conversation that I had with Arthur last night. I knew that what I did was right, but I couldn't help but feel sad about it. I genuinely enjoyed working at Williams Incorporated and I love Arthur. I hated the way things ended between us and I knew that I've only got myself to blame for that. If only I stood my ground and continued to refuse Ellie's offer to go to that party. If only I stayed with Ellie that night instead of going directly to the bar. If only I didn't come home with Arthur that night. If only I left my own glass slipper. If only. The sadness that flowed through my veins deadened my mind. It was a poison to my spirit, dulling me and killing off my other emotions until it was the only one that remained. It was as if a dark mist had settled upon me and refused to shift, and no matter how bright the day was I would feel no sun and hear no bird song. In that moment the world felt lost to me and I knew of nothing that would bring it back into focus. I knew that things would eventually get better, but how? I am still jobless and my rent is due soon. I haven't received any other offers yet from the entertainment companies I've applied to before, And I still haven't applied to any other job because I am too sad to even leave my bed. All I wanted to do was to lie down and to let myself be consumed with thoughts of what if and if only. My thoughts were interrupted when I started hearing my phone pinging multiple times. I scowled in annoyance, regretting that I did not turn it off last night. I closed my eyes tightly, trying my best to ignore the irritating beeping sound, but it never stopped. I groaned in exasperation as I lazily reached for my phone at the edge of my bedside table. My heart sank to the pit of my stomach once I saw all of the messages that I've been receiving. I placed a hand on my mouth as I read through each one. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Kevin was sending me multiple threatening messages. Each message became more aggressive and terrifying. He warned me that if I ever attempted to go back to the entertainment industry, then I will face terrible consequences. He will spread rumors again about me to ruin my image, make sure that every project I had will fail through his connections, and exaggerate the truth about the fling that we had when I was still working at KB Studios. Tears started rolling down my cheeks as I threw my phone at the end of my bed and buried my face in my pillow. I felt a sense of loss and defeat, knowing that he has the power and the connections to do this to me. The fear that has consumed me soon after overwhelmed me until I finally broke down entirely, all my defenses washed away by my salty tears. I tried to hold it and be strong for once, but the pain came out like an uproar from my throat in the form of a silent scream. The beads of water started falling down one after another, without a sign of stopping. I squeezed the pillow tightly as I tried to scream into it, but my voice was melted by it. The muffled sobs racked against my chest. I laid on my back and faced the ceiling. The tears that fell from my eyes pooled in my ears as I stared blankly at my peeling wallpaper. My eyes were burning and my chest felt heavy as if it were filled with lead. I could no longer see clearly. All I knew was that because of him, I would never be able to pursue my dreams as a makeup and hairstylist again. I picked myself up from the bed. I walked up to my vanity to look at myself in the mirror. I sat there looking at the reflection in front of me. I looked so miserable. Why have I allowed myself to turn this way? I can't make up any more excuses as to why I allow Kevin to step on me. I should take control of how I live my life from now on, not Kevin. The world doesn't revolve around him. Enough is enough. I wiped my tears away and decided to go back to something that makes me happy. Makeup. Putting on makeup on myself relaxes me. It's my way to relieve unbearable stress. With every stroke of my brush, it takes me back to the time where everything was stress-free. I remember the time when I first had my own makeup kit. I tried to recall the happiness I felt that time. It made me look back to the time where my friends and family encouraged me to pursue my dreams. I reminisced about what my dad told me before I moved out of our house. His words made my heart clench as I tried remembering every word. You're my most precious daughter. I only want what's best for you. If that means moving miles away from us, then I'll learn to live with that. Just promise me that you'll always be happy, and do not let anyone trample on you. I stared back at myself in the mirror. I smiled as I recognized the familiar figure in front of me. This is who I am. I won't let Kevin or anyone walk all over me. He's going to regret all of his threats. I stood up to call Ellie. Maybe she can help get back at him. Hey Ellie. It's me. I greeted her as soon as she picked up. What's up? She said enthusiastically, making me smile. Actually, I have a situation right now. Can you come over? I asked awkwardly, twirling a lock of hair with my finger. I'm not sure if she's available today. Sure. I'm free today. I'll be there. She retorted, making me sigh in relief. I'm so lucky to have a friend I can rely on. All right. See you. Bye. I told her as I faintly heard her bid me goodbye before I hung up. I plopped down on the sofa after the call ended. I opened my phone to read again the threats Kevin sent me. I scrolled through everything. It made my skin crawl up in fear, but I shook my head and closed the phone. I promised myself that I won't let him have power over me. It's my time to get back at him. I already lost my career in Arthur because of him. What's more can he take away from me? My thoughts were cut off as I heard a knock on the door. Who is it? I shouted as I walked up to the door. It's me. I heard Ellie's familiar cheerful voice. I proceeded to open the door and welcomed her inside. I hugged her as soon as she stepped in. It's been a while, huh? I told her after we pulled away. I'm sorry for calling you out here all of a sudden. I looked down apologetically. It's fine. Besides, I'm bored at home. Good thing you called me, or else I could have died from the boredom. She babbled as we made our way to the couch. So what's this situation you're talking about? She added curiously as she raised her eyebrows at me. Well, before I could even start to explain the situation, she cut me off. Is this some boy problem again? she asked abruptly as she wiggled her eyebrows playfully at me. Well, yes and no, I uttered seriously, to which she furrowed her eyebrows in confusion. Let me fill you in on what happened first before I tell you the main reason as to why I called you over, I added. She turned to me to listen intently to what I have to say. I told her everything that happened for the past few days. I started with Arthur finding out the truth, followed by our awkwardness at work, and the abrupt cancellation of my application in LLL Corp. After those, I told her about my confrontation with Kevin, then my confrontation with Arthur, up until to my resignation in Williams Incorporated. She sat there and listened attentively to my story. She would sometimes add a few comments in between. After I finished everything, she seemed to be in shock about everything. I'm sorry for bombarding you with all of these. I ran a hand on my hair nervously. I know everything is too much, but she needs to know all of these first before I tell her about Kevin's threats. She pulled me unexpectedly into a hug as she gently patted my back. I'm so sorry you had to go through all those things. Her voice cracked. I pulled away to check her appearance. My eyes widened in surprise as tears started rolling down her face. Panic filled my veins as I gently touched her hand. I didn't expect her to be so affected by this. Hey, why are you crying? I asked as I wiped a tear from her eyes with the tip of my fingers. I then stood up to get some tissue. Hey, don't worry, I'm fine, I reassured her as I handed it over to her. How did you manage to go through all of that? I can't even imagine going through all those things in a couple of days, she replied worriedly after she finished wiping away all of her tears. I just had to be strong for myself, I guess, I muttered nonchalantly with a shrug as she pulled me again for another hug. She gripped me tightly as if to comfort me. I loosened my body as I succumbed to her warm embrace. This is all that I needed. Eventually we pulled away and she stared at me. Is this the situation that you wanted to tell me? She asked me seriously. I shook my head in response. Then what is it? She tilted her head to the side in confusion as she questioned me. Here. I reached out for my phone and gave it to her. She gasped in shock as she scrolled through the messages that Kevin sent me. This is harassment. We should do something. She shook her head in disbelief as she grimaced in disgust at the words he said. I nodded in agreement as she handed me back my phone. Actually, I thought of a way to get back at him. I wanted to share with the world everything he has done to me, including these threats as evidence, I told her confidently. Her eyes widened in surprise as she nodded her head in acknowledgement. I know that in this industry reputation is everything. By the time the public finds out about this, no one would consider even being acquainted with him. Yeah, that's a great idea. She furrowed her eyebrows in determination, quickly agreeing to the idea, but soon her face had turned into a solemn expression. Are you sure about this? If you're going to that, you're telling the public your most painful memory. I just wanted to make sure before you do this, you have thought about it well, she added as she gave me a concerned look. I held her hand to assure her. Yes. It's about time people know how horrible Kevin is. I gripped her hand tightly to reassure her that I will be fine. And besides, if worst comes to worst and it gets to court, I'll make sure that it would be him behind the bars. I can finally get back at him for the torment he made me experience.